Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 108. Thanks to everyone that has spent the year listening to the podcast. I'm filling up the queue with more episodes, more videos, and more of everything, really. So, going to make some very cool announcements soon about some more series projects throughout 2020. So, if you liked the Road to Hoylake series that led up to the Walker Cup this year, you're going to get more of that next year. The Cyber Monday deal is still up on the website. If you didn't see the deal, you get a trucker hat of your choice, 2 towels, one for you and one for a friend, and one of our custom logo metal ball markers. $25. So check out the website. It's thebackoftherange.com/holiday deal. Go pick up some merch while everything is still in stock and get it done quick before I get out of here for the holidays. That way you can get it next week. Having said that, we just passed over 100 reviews in Apple Podcasts, which is incredible and very much appreciated. And I was planning on sending something special to the 100th review, but I didn't see any comments in the review or anything to let me know who left it. So let's try something different. See if I can get some holiday cheers sent out to you before Christmas. So if you're listening right now and you have not left a review, leave one and then shoot me an email with your contact information. I'll send you a towel. I'll send you something. Do it before Monday. My email address is ben@thebackoftherange.com. Hopefully that's simple enough. Get that done. I'll get some stuff out to you. Let's get started with this week's episode. We catch up this week with 4-time PGA Tour winner and member of the Champions Tour, one of the most consistent players in the history of the PGA Tour, Bob Estes. So for those of you that follow the PGA Tour closely, you'll remember that Victor Hovland, former guest here, national champion Oklahoma State, he set a new record by scoring in the 60s for 18 consecutive PGA Tour rounds. Whose record did he break? Well, that belonged to Bob Estes. He set that back in 2001. Bob played collegiately at the University of Texas. He racked up numerous honors and awards in his amateur career. 1988 was his year. No argument there. He won the Haskins. He won the Nicholas Award. He was the NCAA Player of the Year. And his final amateur tournament was the Texas State Amateur, which, of course, he won. We spoke about his early success as a professional. He won his first pro tournament before getting to the PGA Tour, but once he got there, he won the Rookie of the Year. Other than time away from the game due to some injuries, he's basically been on tour for 30 consecutive years. Now, there's a lot of numbers I could throw at you about Bob's career, but the one that really stands out to me, he played over 650 PGA Tour events and made the cut about 70% of the time. Remarkable achievement. And how do you do it? Well, that's what we got into in this episode. We covered a lot of topics, probably needed some more time, but we chatted about the Champions Tour, Pro-Ams. Yeah, we're going to need to have Bob back on the podcast for a follow-up episode, but let's get the first installment out to you right now. Bob, thanks for joining me here at the Back of the Range. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Looking forward to it, Ben.
Well, let's start off with a simple one. The name of the podcast is The Back of the Range. You've had this incredible career on the PGA Tour. You're a rookie in '89, so you know what it's like to have longevity. What does your off-season look like? What does your practice routine in the off-season look like? Maybe now, possibly compared to what it was like when you're on the PGA Tour full-time. What does your off-season look like to get ready for the season on the Champions Tour?
Well, virtually every year, whether it was the PGA Tour or the Champions Tour, my main focus, since I only had about 6 to 8 weeks, really, away from tournament golf, was training. So I have a great trainer here in Austin who is a world-class pole vaulter, and I'm still training year-round. I just can't do it, quite as often or with as much intensity sometimes as I can in November and December and maybe part of January.
Sure.
So my first tournament won't be until the second week of February in Naples, so I have even more time to train. So we're picking up the training a little bit here in the off season. I needed to get back a little bit more upper body strength for different reasons, hopefully to hit a little bit further and hopefully to, be a little bit better at digging out of the rough and, injury prevention and stuff like that. So I'm not getting crazy with it like
Sure.
it sounds like Bryson DeChambeau might be.
Man,
but
are you reading my notes? Because you already talked about your pole vaulting trainer, which I have to ask you how that happens, and then you talked about Bryson looks like he ate Bryson and became a bigger Bryson. So yeah, so you're going easy because you're just trying to do injury prevention, but also pick up strength.
I'm not going easy. I'm just not going as hard as Bryson. I've lifted heavy in the past.
Okay.
And got too big and too tight. And at some point, I had to back off of that. I knew I never was a great ball striker. I hit it pretty good at times, but I needed to try to figure out if I wasn't swinging the club as well or hitting the ball as well as I thought I should and needed to, because my swing wasn't good enough or because I was just a little bit too thick and tight through the chest and shoulders. And as it turns out, it was a combination of both. And so once I quit lifting quite as heavy and got a little bit more upper body mobility back, I was able to, figure out that my golf swing needed to change a little bit too. So over the last 5 or 6 years, I strengthened my grip, and that helped me get a little bit more square as opposed to open with my shoulders and forearms at address. And so then I was able to swing the club a little bit better and more freely and hit it, straighter as opposed to hitting big cuts like I used to.
Yeah. Boy, we're going to jump around because just by you saying that opened up another question. Before we talk about your start, and I want to hit on a little bit of your career at the University of Texas, one of the most prolific careers in college golf. I'm not sure how many people know what you did in college, so we're definitely going to hit on that. But you just brought this up of trying to hit it farther and getting stronger. You had this great amateur career, this great collegiate career. You were Rookie of the Year on the PGA Tour. Was it a challenge for you to kind of stay in your lane as far as like, hey, this is what has taken me this far. I know I can be successful. But when you get out on tour and you see different swings and you see different instructors, other people surpassing you or different, is it hard? Was it hard for you to just kind of stick to what you knew and ignore the noise of, I need to do this. I need to switch to these set of irons. How is it as a professional to try and stay focused on what has worked for you in the past?
Well, when I first got out on tour, I mean, and I wouldn't say that, I was a world beater by any means. I mean, golf was never that easy for me. I worked really hard at it.
Right.
And, had a pretty decent record coming out of college in amateur golf. There were still plenty of guys that beat up on me all the time. And we can talk about a few of those guys later if you want to. But anyway, But as far as when I first got out on tour, one thing that I quickly realized was that I didn't hit the ball well enough. I usually survived by just keeping the ball in play for the most part. And then I had one of the best short games in the world, at that time and throughout most of my career. If you look at the statistics, my best statistic was almost always scrambling. And that's also why I was able to stay on tour for so long, because I never hit it quite as good as I needed to be one of the very best players in the world. And so I was searching and working on things all the time, making equipment changes as I thought I needed to improve my ball striking, worked with different teachers, not a lot of teachers, but, some. And, it just never quite worked out. It never quite got to the point where I hit it as good as I felt like I should until that stretch in 2001 through part of 2003, maybe, when I went to a 10-finger grip or a baseball grip. And I did win 3 times in a 13-month stretch and also won the fall finish one of those years. And so I got to the point where I was hitting it pretty good, but I was kind of limited because I couldn't hit it quite as far as I felt like I needed to really keep up and compete. So that was something I maybe shouldn't have gotten away from, and I actually could be getting back to it here during this off season. So we'll see how it goes.
There you go. Well, like I mentioned, you played at the University of Texas, 3-time All-American, you're 88 Player of the Year, won the Nicholas Award, won the Haskins Award, won a state amateur championship at Texas. And well, here I have a few questions for you as far as your collegiate career and amateur career. So you have these amateur wins and you had these collegiate wins. I'm just curious. Was the U.S. Amateur or Walker Cup on your radar any of those years? You can make an argument that in '88 you're the best player in college golf. I know that was kind of the middle year between the Sunningdale Walker Cup in '87 and Peachtree in Georgia in '89. Do you have any recollection of what that was like as far as Walker Cup or U.S. Am around that time?
Well, of course, I would have loved to have played, in the Walker Cup, and I played a couple of U.S. Ams.
Yeah.
I got beat by Verplank in the second round the year that he won at Oak Tree at his home club while he was there in college. But, Walker Cup was something that would have been incredible to be a part of. But my main goal all along, besides winning the NCAA championship as a team and an individual, was to go straight from college to the PGA Tour. And I did do that. So, no, after the NCAA, my senior year in June of '88, I played the Texas State Amateur a week or two later, and I won that finally. So that was a big win. So that was my last amateur tournament. And then I think the very next week, I played my very first professional tournament in Missouri, the Bogey Hills Invitational, which was the biggest mini tour tournament at the time, and I won that. So my very first week as a professional, I won that tournament and won $40,000. So I got off to a great start. And during that same time frame, that summer and fall, I played in some state opens, some other mini tour events. I got 5 invites to play in PGA Tour events while I was going through the qualifying process. And I had to go through 3 stages. There were 3 stages back then. I think there's 4 now. I'm not for sure about that.
No, you're right. It's pre-Q.
I know the qualifying is basically, for the Korn Ferry Tour. Yeah. But anyway, I had to go through all 3 stages back then, and I made it through, tied for, I think, 32nd or 5th or something at the final stage out in Palm Desert, and went straight to the tour. So my rookie year was 1989.
Yeah. We're recording this the week, in a few days, the Q School finals are going to start for Korn Ferry Tour down here in South Florida, actually in Central Winter Garden, Florida, or Orange County National. You mentioned, being a rookie of the year in '89. I know you had to go back to Q School just a couple times, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on, what qualifying for the PGA Tour looked like back then for you, where, once a year you go to this one Q School, and that gets you right back onto the PGA Tour. Now it's Q School can only get you to the Korn Ferry Tour, and then you have PGA Tour Canada, the Mackenzie Tour in Latin America and China, all these developmental tours. There's more places to play, but there's less money to make on those tours. I mean, if you were starting out right now, how much harder would it be starting out now compared to perhaps having that one jump from Q School that takes you to the PGA Tour?
Well, it may depend on how you mean that, because there are so many great players now, coming out of college or from academies, or all around the world. So as far as the depth of players, it's probably, it's only going to get tougher. It's probably as tough as it's ever been. But I know when they made that announcement many years ago that qualifying school was not going to get you directly to the PGA Tour, but to the, buy.com or web.com or whatever it was at the time. A lot of people didn't necessarily agree with that. Some players probably need that time, and they've admitted it on the secondary tour. But others were, good enough to go straight to the PGA Tour without, needing a year on the tour below the PGA Tour. So really it was just kind of an individual thing. It wasn't necessarily good or bad. And then obviously players sometimes play those a few events that they're allowed to play in, like Jordan Spieth, and make enough money or even win and go straight to the PGA Tour. So there's different ways to do it, but the quality of play is just getting better and better.
You mentioned Spieth. I know we've talked about Texas. So many great players coming out of the University of Texas, whether it's him, whether it's Justin Leonard and Brad Elder, and obviously Kyton Crenshaw, just legends. I'm just curious, how much interaction do you have, or have you had with the Texas golf team, since becoming professional? I know you're a big Texas guy, and just curious, like, do you go back to visit with the teams, or what's been your interaction with Texas golf?
Well, I do some, not as much as I would have liked. Part of, I'm a member here at Austin Country Club. I'm also an honorary member at the UT Golf Club, member at the Austin Golf Club. So I have different places to play and practice when I'm in town, and I haven't spent as much time at the UT Golf Club as I probably would have liked, getting to know, more of the players better over the years. I've met a lot of them, chatted with a lot of them at different times, but yeah, I haven't spent as much time with them as I would have liked. And part of that is, well, don't forget, I did have a stretch where I was injured for quite a while, but in other times I wasn't spending as much time in Austin. But it would have been nice to spend a little bit more time with them. I mean, I have spoken to the team a couple different times, played in many of the fundraiser golf tournaments that helped build the academy for the teams, men's and women's, at the UT Golf Club. So, that is one thing I kind of regret, is not having spent a little bit more time with them. But I struggle so much with my game and my equipment in particular that I spend a lot of time just going back and forth from working on clubs to hitting balls and trying to learn how to swing the club better and hit the ball better, and spending as much time as I would have liked actually playing golf and maybe playing with more of the members on both teams.
I saw a picture, I think it was in Golf Magazine or Golf Digest. It looked like it was the Texas team getting on a private jet. It was Cole Hammer and the Cootie boys and a couple of the other guys are getting on this private jet to go to a golf tournament. How many private jet rides were you taking when you were a member of the Longhorn team back in the 80s?
It seems like we did take just a few, but not many.
Okay.
Usually we were just, either driving the tournaments. Our schedule wasn't nearly as good back then as what the teams have played recently.
Yeah.
We played, more tournaments in Texas, and we usually would go to some nice tournaments, whether it was a preview tournament for the NCAA, wherever that was, in California or Ohio or wherever. And remember, in Florida, I remember playing Greenleaf.
Oh, wow.
Prior to the NCAA tournament.
I played a tournament at Greenleaf. My story's probably not as good as yours, but
well, I don't have a story as much as I remember it being really hard. So I think that was the fall of my freshman year when I maybe played that, and then at the NCAA tournament. But that was a hard course. But we had a nice schedule, but we didn't take a couple of great trips as a team. One was a tournament in Japan, and one was just a golf trip to Scotland to play a lot of the courses over there, which teams were allowed to do once every 4 years. So that was incredible. Got to do that. But we had two of our own tournaments here in Austin. One in the spring and one in the fall. And I remember going to Houston to play, and Beaumont and Fort Worth, and up to Dallas, at least for the Southwest Conference one year. But they play a pretty incredible schedule now.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, they're jet setting and flying all over the place. So I want to ask you, I read a quote that you provided, and it's kind of stuck with me since just kind of getting set up for our conversation today. But you made this comment that you didn't really learn how to practice and prepare yourself until you got on tour. Can you explain kind of what you're kind of alluding to there? Is like, I guess, how did you learn how to become a professional? It's one thing about dreaming to be on the PGA Tour, dreaming to win titles, but I don't know how many people necessarily, young kids, college players, are dreaming about a job and what goes into becoming a professional. Can you maybe speak to how you learned how to do that?
Yeah, and I can't remember exactly, what I said in that quote, because I was always a hard worker.
Right.
I played other sports growing up. I played high school basketball up through high school. So I definitely learned what hard work was all about then. but I was also, pretty much addicted to golf as well. And so I was always practicing, really hard, because I was 6 months basketball, 6 months golf, a little bit of overlap on both sides. So I was always having to play catch up, with my teammates. And then in college, I continued that, but then I kind of got burned out my sophomore year. So, there's different things that you learn over time. Sometimes I spent maybe too much time practicing out of the sand. I mean, I might go in the bunker, as obsessed as I was with golf. I might go hit bunker shots for 2 hours, but then maybe go to the driving range to hit balls, and all I could do was hit, pull cuts or slices. So at some point, I finally learned that, I don't need to spend that much time in the bunker consecutively, especially if I'm about to go, hit balls and work on my swing a little bit. So at times I practiced too hard, especially after a round on tour. And at times I trained too hard during a tournament. So all of that stuff is very individualistic, and you have to learn, what is best for you, because it's not always the same for every player.
Yeah. You mentioned just being so driven and so devoted to it. And I think a lot of people it seems like part of the culture now on the PGA Tour is talking about camaraderie and maybe these guys are a little bit closer and they're all rooting for each other. I'm just curious, when you got on tour, what were you overly concerned with anyone else? Were you were you traveling with a certain set of guys? Were there people that were friends? Or what was kind of your, I guess, approach to it? Was it just, I'm putting my head down, I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to make a paycheck, or I'm here to further my career? Just curious maybe what your approach to it was.
Well, I certainly was.
And I don't mean, I'm sorry, let me rephrase. I don't mean paycheck as I'm not trying to win. I'm just looking at it as like, this is a career, this is a job. Let me rephrase that.
Oh, no, I was thinking more of what you said about other players on tour.
Okay.
When I qualified for the tour, there were only 2 other players who went directly from college to the PGA Tour, as I did. And those 2 were Billy Mayfair, who played at Arizona State, and Larry Silvera, that played at Arizona.
Yeah.
So a lot of my friends over the next, couple of years never made it to the tour. So I didn't really have any close friends or ex-teammates that were playing the tour, most of my career. So, I mean, I was friendly with a lot of guys, and there's a lot of amazing guys. They're just super, super nice, great guys. And so, but not that I was, best friends with any of them. I was still pretty much doing my own thing and just trying to get as good as I could, as quickly as I could. But, as far as, say, for instance, playing practice rounds, I pretty much play a practice round with anybody or anybody that would play along with me. So a lot of times you just kind of show up to the tee, and whoever's there, y'all just hit it and go. And then, that's how you get to know some players better as well, and caddies.
Sure.
So, it's different, again, for just about every player out there, because some of them maybe were teammates in college, or some of them, maybe their wives are best friends and they become best friends. And so, that's just kind of how some of that stuff evolves.
You mentioned practice rounds. I mean, that's probably the work of it. Getting out to go play the term is actually the you can stop working and just go execute there. But along with practice rounds, you have the Pro-Am rounds. And, I mean, you've played in over 650 PGA Tour events, and I can't even fathom how many Pro-Am rounds you've played in and all the characters you've seen. I mean, we could fill up an entire other episode with just Pro-Am stories, I could imagine. But
we probably could.
And I'm not going to put you through that torture, but how did you approach Pro-Am rounds where you could at least get something out of it for your own game, but also provide a good experience for the amateurs that have paid to be in the Pro-Am? Did you have a kind of rule of thumb for how you approach those days? And then after that, I'll definitely at least ask you for one good Pro-Am story. You got to have at least one good one.
Okay, I think I have a few, but yeah, I think I, for the most part, from the very beginning, understood the importance of the Pro-Am rounds.
Right.
And a lot of times it's not that the guys don't enjoy playing the Pro-Am rounds. It's just how long they take.
Of
and
course.
a lot of the amateurs get frustrated as well with how long they take, because a lot of times we just have too many people on the golf course at one time. But I always tried to, be very nice to, the amateurs that were paying the money, or they were clients of other people putting up the money.
Sure.
So my caddy and I, no matter who my caddy was, I usually had great caddies that were very friendly and very helpful. So so we tried to be as courteous and friendly and helpful as we could be to the amateurs. Because we also know how much they appreciated that, and and that's kind of what they would expect too. So I just at times I was able to help some of the amateurs with their games and help them play better immediately, or I would offer advice or suggest advice, for them to maybe work on after the round, in the future, or just ask them questions about, who they work with or what they're working on, or have they ever worked with a teacher, things like that. And also just try to make them understand that they don't need to stress out too much about how they play, that we pretty much have already seen it all. Playing in as many Pro-Ams as we played.
Yeah, they don't need to try and impress you.
So a lot of times, they talk about, especially if it's the first time they've ever played a Pro-Am and been on tour, and they hit that first tee shot and maybe they don't hit it very good, and then they admit that's the most nervous they've ever been on the first tee or hitting a shot or whatever. So we get to kind of joke and laugh about that, try to calm them down, and whatever way seems to work the best. So so it's and actually kind of changing up just a little bit.
No, you're good.
This year in particular, for the last, virtually all year long on the Champions Tour, you meet all kinds, of amateurs. Some that are great players, some that never played, some that can be a little bit obnoxious, just like we can be at times.
Of course.
Or the amateur that's in your hip pocket all day long and just machine guns questions at you from start to finish. But now I've kind of lost track of what I was going to tell you. But we've had a lot of. Oh, no, I was going to say we met so many great people. My caddy and I during the Pro-Ams this year. Sometimes we played one, sometimes we played two. The way the Champions Tour is set up.
Sure. And
we just met so many great people this year playing in the Pro-Ams. It was just kind of fascinating. And, my caddy was having a little bit of a health issue during the summertime. And we played with a group of doctors. And this one doctor is still, kind of checking up on him to make sure everything is good. And
that's awesome.
But the very next morning after the Pro-Am, he was able to go get a checkup. The doctor got him right in immediately to go get a checkup. And, it's just kind of a temporary thing. But anyway, so stuff like that. So we need a lot of really great people, men and women. So,
well, I would also imagine that you would be, and the more I think about it, is you would probably be one of the best draws for a Pro-Am, because ultimately I'm guessing your message to them is, look, this is how I've done it. I've worked really hard to get where I'm at and to stay on the PGA Tour, Champions Tour, whatever tour whatever the Pro-Am is. But there's no secret pill I can give you. There isn't some secret of the pros that I know about that you're never going to know about. I just work really hard at this, and that's something that they could really take away. and put into their own games. Now they may never get to the level where they're a scratch or they're playing on the PGA Tour, but hey, if they can shave 3-4 shots off their game, and also I'm sure that you work tons with them with short game and also being a great wind player. I mean, being from Texas, you got to be a great wind player. So I would guess you'd have tons of things to communicate. So those are the positives, but those are the great things you've been able to communicate. But let me ask you, what's the Pro-Am round that just sticks out that, like, man, only in a Pro-Am would this story ever happen?
Well, we've seen just about everything, like I mentioned earlier. I mean, I've seen them go straight sideways. I've seen them hit them between their legs. I've seen them hit a shot that maybe hit the ball washer or a curb or something and went, back behind us. So we've pretty much seen it all. The one thing that always stands out that I'll never forget, we were playing a Pro-Am in Greensboro at Forest Oaks. The venue has changed, since then, of course.
Sure.
That was many years ago, but I think it was a Monday Pro-Am. I don't think it wasn't the Wednesday Pro-Am. I think it was a Monday Pro-Am that I'd agreed to play in. And we were playing with a bunch of, I think, NASCAR Truck Series drivers.
Oh, nice.
And so, and I did get to drive on the Charlotte Motor Speedway the very next day, but that's just kind of, that was kind of a part of the deal. But back to Monday, we were warming up for the round, and the weather was really nice. And then as soon as we got out to our hole, it was a shotgun start. So as soon as we got out to the hole we were going to start, it began to rain. And the NASCAR truck driver that I was playing with, I'm pretty sure he had never played golf. I think that's what they were saying. So, he had, a bag of clubs that were not very good, and not even sure if they were his. But we get on the first tee, and I don't remember seeing any on the driving range. But then we get on the first tee, all of a sudden it starts to pour, and he doesn't have a glove. And so when it's his turn to hit, he swings, and the club came flying out of his hands and went high and up to the left into a tree. There was a big tree in front of that tee and to the left. And so the club came flying out of his hands and went up in the tree and got stuck in the tree. And I don't know if anybody ever was able to retrieve it, but that's a shot I'll never forget.
Sounds like it.
So that was pretty interesting. I'm sure he was very embarrassed, but like I said, it was pouring rain, and he didn't have a glove on, and the grips were probably pretty slick, and it just came flying out of his hands.
Wow.
And then earlier this year, I guess it was in September, I think it's when we played at the Big Sporting Goods Open in New York. I had an amateur team of 3 men and 1 lady. And this one particular guy who wasn't the best player on our team, and it wasn't really his fault because, a lot of times when you tee off, everybody's kind of going to their balls and trying to find their tee shots and stuff
Sure.
like that. But 3 times during that round, the same guy almost hit the lady in our group with his next shot. One of those actually hit the cart while she was sitting in it. The other 2 times almost hit her while she was out walking around. And a lot of times they thought they weren't even close to the line of play necessarily. But like I said, he wasn't very good. And but 3 times she almost got hit. So that was kind of bizarre. So yeah, we see a lot of interesting things on Wednesdays and Thursdays now in the Pro-Ams.
So I can only imagine, and I can imagine it's probably not going to change anytime soon. You're talking about the Champions Tour. You had a major medical exemption in 17 and 18 on the regular tour, so you had a handful of events to play in, and then also splitting time between the Champions Tour. We see all those really super low scores, and people think that, okay, well, they just set the course up super easy. Totally not the case. It's just everyone out there is just so incredible. What was your first reaction, or when you're 48, 49 years old, what was your first kind of thoughts about playing in the Champions Tour? Was it something that, completely different to you, or was it just going back to see guys you'd play the regular tour with? I'm actually very fascinated with the Champions Tour. I'd like to see it get bigger and bigger, like it was during the days of, Nicklaus and Palmer and Trevino. Talk to me a little bit about your experience on the Champions Tour when you first started out.
the quality of play on the Champions Tour is better than what people realize.
Right.
And as far as getting bigger and better, that has pretty much everything to do with, the most successful players from their PGA Tour days, European Tour days, committing to play on the Champions Tour, or, if there are a number of tournaments on the Champions Tour. Just like Ernie Els is planning on playing, I think, a pretty full schedule on the Champions Tour this next year. He's already turned 50, but he turned 50 at the very end of the season, so he wasn't able to play an event yet.
Right.
But Retief Goosen is, playing full-time on the Champions Tour. Obviously, Bernhard Langer. Fred Couples plays when his back feels good. Tom Watson is, continued to play. He's not playing as much the last few years, but, it has a lot to do with, the bigger names. Yeah. So we'll see if and when Phil play some on the Champions Tour. I can see him playing a few of the senior majors in particular, not necessarily in 2020, but maybe after that. So we'll see. But yeah, it's getting more and more competitive. Let me mention this right quick, because you talked about me playing on both tours in 17 and 18. In 2017, my last event that year on the regular tour was the Wyndham at Sedgefield. Great golf course, fun to play. Everybody loves playing it. It's not necessarily hard, not necessarily easy, but so I played that event. I think I missed the cut by a couple of shots, but played okay, but not good enough. And then the very next week, I go to Seattle, the Seattle area, to play in the Boeing, and so I played that event, and the setup and the course at the Boeing were more difficult on the Champions Tour than they were the prior week on the regular tour at Sedgefield. So after I played another tournament or two I think it was maybe it was the next week, I can't remember. But I was asking some of the guys, I was like, are the courses always, set up as difficult on the Champions Tour? And they told me that in the last year and a half or so, which would take us back to the beginning of 2016, that's when they started setting them up longer and tougher, because except for maybe just a little bit of length, they get the greens just as firm and fast as on the regular tour. So there's not that much difference from the Champions Tour setups to the regular tour setups, except for, maybe a little bit of length most weeks. So it's a great tour and loving playing it.
Is there anything, and I mean, you already hit on Phil, whether he's going to play or not. Is there anything that, not to be critical of the tour, but is there anything that you would like to see potentially changed or accentuated to maybe draw more attention, whether it's in fan attendance? Because, again, you have, all these established players. Everyone really knows the names. You have long-standing relationships with sponsors and with different, with the galleries. Is there anything that maybe you think it can be done to boost it, or is it really just predicated on the bigger names playing on that tour?
I think for the most part, it just has to do with more of the bigger names playing. I mean, Can you imagine some of the guys that could be playing right now that aren't, and how many more people would come out to watch? Yeah. I mean, certain tournaments that we play, the attendance is incredible. We play in a lot of golf star communities, like the newer events that we have in South Dakota. People come out by the tens of thousands, even in not so good weather sometimes. So there's, I guess, a lot of the talk at times is about the cities or the areas that we don't play in, when maybe we could be playing, in those particular cities that the PGA Tour does not play in. But as I say that, we have 27 tournaments right now currently on the schedule, and if that went to 32 or 35 or whatever, more like it used to be on the Champions Tour, are the guys willing to play that many weeks? Because the way the schedule is right now, we have the built-in off weeks.
Sure.
And so it's just about right as far as how many tournaments guys want to play over the course of the year. And so most weeks you get most of the best players playing. And if you added tournaments, that would get diluted somewhat. So as things go and as business goes, we're going to, at times, lose a sponsor or two and lose a tournament or two. And then, they're always looking to replace those. And so then we may end up going to some of those places that we don't currently play that would love to have a Champions Tour event if they weren't going to get a PGA Tour event. So we'll see how that goes over the next few years.
Yeah, I was speaking with a previous guest about the Canadian Tour, and he was telling me how the Mackenzie Tour, the fans would come out because that they just don't get golf as much in that area, and he would just get huge crowds on Canadian Tour events. So yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. It'd be interesting to have some of these tournaments at places that don't normally see tournament golf. But
and we do play in Calgary. Don't forget.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We get great crowds in Calgary. Lots of people come out to watch. So they look forward to that, and we do too. So, but that is a good example. There's other places. Canada is a giant country. There's we could be playing in other cities in Canada as well. But there's plenty of areas in the U.S. that we don't hit either that maybe we could, and maybe we will in the future.
Yeah. Well, I want to you've been very gracious with your time. I just want to get you out of here on one thing. You're from Texas, so used to playing in the wind. I know that one of your, of all the tournaments that you've played in, I know that you're a big fan of playing in the Open Championship. I know that was one of your favorite majors that you've played in. Just kind of curious for people listening that are always trying to improve their game and knock some shots off their handicap. Maybe they're not used to playing in high wind conditions. Maybe what are some of the key fundamentals that you try and keep in mind when trying to play in the wind? And then if you can, maybe what's one of the worst conditions, or what are some of the worst conditions you ever played in as far as wind?
You gave me a lot to think about there, especially as much as I've played in the wind and
I know
all the different opens that I've played in and things like that. But actually, one of the worst conditions that I ever played in was when I was in high school. I was a sophomore in high school in Abilene, Texas, and I think there were 5 different cities and maybe 7 or 8 schools in our district. And one of our district rounds was in Odessa, Texas, at Odessa Country Club. And so we're playing our team golf, mainly, our district, regional, and state in the spring. And that's when it can get really, really windy in Texas, as most people know. And so we were playing that particular day when the wind was gusting up to 60 miles an hour. And I mean, it was already howling that morning as we were, getting ready to play. And there was my dad, to mention that, my dad was our high school golf coach.
Okay.
He was also a football, basketball coach as well. But then he was a golf coach as well at McMurray before he got the golf coaching job at Evelyn Cooper, where I played. So anyway, if any one of the coaches decided that we were going to play on a particular day, we would have to play. And it was so bad. Don't forget how dusty it is out in West Texas. So the dust is flying. I'm sure tree branches were coming down. But my dad knew that we had the best team and that we would deal with it the best. So my dad voted for us to play, even though all the other coaches voted not to play. So we played that round, and it was awful. I had dust in my eyes. I remember actually being over against the fence on a par 5 that goes along the road or highway there, and I got hit from behind by a tumbleweed that actually knocked me to my knees. But I was tall and skinny back then, don't forget. So not much resistance on my part, but that was one of the most unbelievable rounds. I think I shot in the probably low to mid 90s that day. And then one of my teammates who played at Stanford, Cole Thompson, shot 76 in those conditions. And it was one of the best rounds of golf I didn't see it, of course, because I was playing, but one of the best rounds of golf I've ever heard of. But that's how good our high school golf team was back then too. But as far as playing in the wind, spin can be very dangerous, and launching the ball too high. Not as big a deal now since the balls don't curve quite as much as they did. But most everybody that plays golf has heard the saying, when when it gets breezy, swing easy. And, you can take that too far and swing too easy, of course, and grip the club too lightly. But you obviously, unless you're playing over a hazard or something like that, it's best to grip down and take more club and swing a little smoother, I guess, because you're trying to impart less spin on the ball, especially into the wind. So it's also good to be able to move the ball right to left and left to right if you're that advanced to counter crosswinds if that's what you need to do on a particular hole, a particular shot. So there's lots to playing in the wind, and it seems like every time it gets windy, we kind of have to relearn some things and adjust. It doesn't just automatically happen as soon as it starts blowing 30 or 40 miles an hour again.
Definitely some good advice there, and obviously a lot of experience on your side. Well, Bob, I really appreciate you joining me this week here at the Back of the Range. Just fascinating to listen to you after your illustrious career, still continuing on the Champions Tour. I'll be seeing you hopefully at the Oasis and hopefully at the Chubb in Naples in February. And hopefully we can catch up again soon. Thanks for joining me here at the Back of the Range.
Okay, you're welcome. It's been fun.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Bob Estes for joining us this week at the Back of the Range. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Every episode is available at thebackoftherange.com. You know about our holiday deal. You know about our Free Towel Tuesdays. So make sure you're following along on social media. We'll see you again next week for another episode here at the Back of the Range.